So in looking at what is it that makes people not only be radically, truly, and deeply successful, but what is it they have to be practicing inside of themselves to navigate their lives that way? And so through working with people like Michele Blackwell, our guest, um, as well as a host of a lot of amazing folks. Like our first guest was the co-founder of Eureka, which if you haven't seen it, it's a portal that provides free services to historically under underrepresented folks in the entrepreneurial space who are trying to get a business off the ground. And or my friend, his name is it's Jeff Cherry, and he's one of the most prominent advocates of how to move forward as a conscious capitalist. And so part of why I put these talks together and put them on air and have been sharing them is it struck me that you don't have to be an Oprah, you don't have to be a Richard Branson to make a difference in your life and the lives of others. You don't have to be born with a superhero gene in your DNA that somehow makes you braver or something than everyone else. But I wanted to offer up their stories as a point of everyday people, just inspiration, because I know all of us know that what happens next is entirely up to each of us, and that none of us are willing to turn the clock back. We're looking forward and we're looking into that horizon. And so by looking towards people who are just regular folks like me and you and Michele and all the folks who have been on this series, just to have a point of, oh yeah, that is how you pivot. Oh yeah, that is how you create a positive effect on the world and for your own life. And so with that in my preamble, please give a warm welcome to Michele Blackwell. Thank you so much for joining me, Michele. She's in LA, so she's got the beautiful like LA skyline, and I've got a snapshot of Woodstock, or what it's like to be in Woodstock, New York behind me.
It's a virtual skyline, so it's...
well, you could have fooled me. It's a pretty... Oh, now that you move your head, I can tell.
Yes, now you can see, yeah.
Yeah, you can so one of my favorite things to kick these conversations off with is this question. When you were a little kid, what was the most fun that you could have?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. I think the most fun that I could have as a little kid, I remember that I've always held this memory, is in the summer times back in the East Coast, they had fireflies. And in the summertime, after you had your bath, your mom would let you go outside and run around in the dusk and chase fireflies and put them in mason jars. And I remember doing this with my very best friend in the whole world, you know, back in the woods of Connecticut behind our house, and collecting fireflies and then bringing them back and going to sleep with them, you know, right on your bedside, and hoping that they would be there in the morning. And that was fun because it was pure fun. We were too young to be self-conscious about our bodies, and we were too innocent to be worried about all the other things going on in the world. We would just get our baths, put on these little undies that had like little tiny purple and blue flowers, and run around catching fireflies.
Oh my God, you just totally put me in that scene.
Yeah.
Really put me in that scene, that lightheartedness. You can smell the sweetness of the air just in hearing you explain it, what that was like for you.
And just fun. You just fun, running and giggling, fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you think about what that kind of fun taught you, right? That it's just pure fun. You're not worried about your body. You're not worried about anything going on in the world, right? How has that carried you through your life?
There's a wild abandon that children have when they are having fun, when they're really engaged, and you can hear them squeal with delight and just simply enjoy themselves and lose their self-consciousness. And I think that every now and then we have to take ourselves back to that.
Yeah.
I think there's a song that says dance like nobody's looking.
Yeah.
You know, we forget, you know, we start to layer in all of these judgments. And I think by the time we're 11, we start to shut down. We start to give ourselves the I can'ts and I can'ts and I can'ts. And I think coming back every now and then and giving yourself, whether it's 10 minutes, an hour, or a day, to just play with wild abandon, to just be free as if nobody's looking and as if nobody's going to judge you, and rediscover who you really are and what really brings you joy.
Yeah. Well, you had a pretty, if I recall correctly, because we've had the pleasure of sitting over many a glass of wine, on both coasts, and talking about the meaning of life. And I'm just curious, because from what I recall, your mom was kind of an ass kicker. Like, she was pretty amazing.
Yeah. She was a big damn deal, as they say, right?
So why don't you tell everyone, aside from this wild abandon, why don't you tell everyone what it's like to have a big damn deal mom and what made her a big damn deal? Because I think that's a cool thing for people to know about.
Yeah, so my mom was the head of policy and planning for the Department of Labor's Office of Federal Contract Compliance. And that's a big, long title, but basically what she's dedicated 30 years of service in her life to is making sure that women and minorities had opportunities in the corporate world and in life. And she actually took on a lot of big corporations with the arm of the federal government behind her, but took them on to challenge some of the ceilings that really kept people down. And for an example is that, at her eulogy, the woman that spoke for her had started working for her. And she said to me, when I started working for your mom, I went to get a loan at a bank and they turned me and my husband down for the loan. And the reason was because I was of childbearing age. And they thought, well, if you have a baby, you might not go back to work, and that would be a loss of income. And so my mom's mandate was to go after, that institution and other institutions who had policies like that and say, no, that's not okay. And she did a lot of it. She changed the world for women. And she's one of the, I was saying this to someone the other day, that there are other women that she worked alongside with, because she worked at DOL, she worked at federally employed women, she worked at UNIFEM at the United Nations, and wasn't in front of the camera. And there are a lot of women that were in front of the camera, but she was really behind the camera, boots on the ground, writing the policy, taking that policy up to Capitol Hill to make sure that those things changed. So, yeah. I'm pretty proud to be your daughter. She did,
Well, when did you figure out that she was a BDD, a big damn deal?
It's funny. I didn't actually realize how big of a deal she was until after she passed away. So she always, she would take me to NRA meetings, NOW meetings, ERA meetings. She'd take me downtown. She took me to the Capitol. She took me to the White House, and I took it all in stride. Like, well, this is just what my mom does. I didn't really understand the impact of what she was doing until her service. People were walking up to me at her memorial and telling me just story after story about things that she did and how she changed their lives, not just from a macro view, but personally, how she, helped them get confidence in the workplace, or, help it mentor them onto the next level. And I remember going, wow, she really walked the walk. I knew she was doing all the stuff on a kind of, macro level, but deep down, she walked the walk every day. And that blew me away.
We'll give people a time stamp too, because when was she first starting this? Like what years was she creating this positive kind of ripple out effect?
Well, you know what? This is really funny too. So I actually was just on a call this morning with the Optimist Club, and I was telling them that I was going through my mother's things a few months ago, and I found some photographs of my mother and my father. These photographs are from the 1960s, and they are doing this outreach work for the Optimist Club, and there's an article written about them in this Connecticut newspaper, the New London Gazette, I think it is, which is a small town in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And talking about their work for the Optimist Club, and I didn't know anything about it. And I happened to see a post from another friend. Her husband is becoming the international vice president of the Optimist Club. And I was like, the Optimist Club, like, wow, like my parents were doing this. So I think this was always in her DNA. This was who she was.
Like the 50s, the 60s?
The 50s and 60s.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. So she was onward march, right? So here you are, you've got this amazing role model, and to you, it's just normal, right? That's just how people navigate the world. So how do you feel like, because it's funny, I feel like in our 20s and 30s, we may be agitating, but we don't have a framework of context in the same way that we do as we move into our 40s and 50s, right? That like suddenly the mosaic isn't just the little broken shards of pottery. You suddenly start to see the patterns, right? Because I know you to be your own person, right? And a lot of people who have strong characters as parents, right? They struggle with that. Like how do I find my own way of contributing? How do I find my own way of expressing, right? How did that play out for you?
Well, that's one of the reasons why I live on the West Coast, honestly. So, I needed to really go to the West Coast and kind of find a place to stand on my own. When my first job was in Washington, D.C. At the American Red Cross. And I could tell you my mother probably knew everybody in Washington, D.C.
Oh my God, I roll central, right?
They actually called me Little Blackwell. So
oh, wow.
I really had to go, to find a place where, I could kind of be my own person and discover all of those things, about myself, without the shadow of being, Little Blackwell or Annie Blackwell Jr.
Yeah. So what did it feel like? What were the ahas when you got out of being the junior or the little anything? Like as you moved into just being your own person, what were the ahas that you were like, oh wow, there I am. Oh, hello me. Like what surprised you about you?
I think the biggest thing that was different for me, and it's part of an East Coast, West Coast kind of culture shift. I think on the East Coast, especially in Washington, D.C., there was very much a very kind of, there's a culture, there's a rigor, there's a kind of working for the Red Cross, there's a kind of suit that you wear, kind of way you do your hair, there's a, I came out to LA, and it's a free-for-all, which is a little unnerving at first. It's everybody, you walk down the street and you see someone in the suit, but you see someone with purple hair, and you see someone with, nose rings. And when I came out here, that was not very common on the East Coast. And I know on the East Coast, it's probably like that now, but,
yeah.
And so I learned, so from chaos comes this unsettlingness. You're unsettled, and then you start to find things that you resonate with, and slowly you start to go, okay, well, I think I kind of like that. I think I'm like this. I think I go here. And so it was a slow, kind of discovery. And but the cool thing was it was a freedom to just go discover all these different aspects of yourself that you like.
So what did you find out?
I found out that, I am a designer, right? I found out that
so you never knew that.
I didn't know that. I didn't think that, I went to film school, which was an act of defiance for my undergraduate. And then when I got to LA,
wait, film school and act of defiance?
An act of defiance. It was a,
I'm going to school,
What?
right? Was it like, take that, Mom?
I went to film school. Yeah, I wanted to major in writing, and she said no. So I was like, well, fine, I'll major in film. Minor in writing. But I discovered the film school that I went to still didn't have a lot of visual language. We didn't talk about visual language where I went to my undergraduate. So I came out here. I went and got an MBA because I thought, okay, I'm gonna work at the studios. I'm gonna get an MBA, and then I discovered design school, and I discovered visual language, and it was as if someone blew the top off my head. Boom, like it was as if I had been speaking a foreign language and no one quite understood me all these years, and all of a sudden I had this visual communications tool which really let me speak for the first time in a way I hadn't before. And that was my finding myself.
I love this because often it's through the acts of defiance, right, that we set ourselves on a path to actually figure out who the heck we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that moment of feeling like the top of your head has been blown off, it can't ever be put back on.
That's the thing, right? You can't put a lid on it once it's out of the box. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me what beauty you have made by giving yourself freedom to defy your mother, to defy these expectations that you grew up with, right? Whether they came from her or you put them on yourself because of that stuff, because a lot of times is us putting it on ourselves. But because I know your path a little bit, obviously, from knowing you, but I want to share with people like those first moments of, that's it, I'm moving to the West Coast, that's it, I'm going to film school, that's it, right? The MBA, oh, design school, whoa, I finally found me, right? Tell me how that has played out both for you and for the world, because you've had a pretty illustrious corporate trajectory, but that's not what I hear you brag about when I hear you brag.
Yeah, ironically, it all does come back to my mother, because my mother had a saying. She used to say this to me all the time as I was growing up: right in the corner where you are. And that was told to her by her mother, who was told to her by her mother. And so my great-grandmother, Adeline, had passed that down to her daughter, and who passed it down to her daughters. And my mother walked the walk. She really did. And when I discovered my creative voice, it was when I could discover that I could do the same thing. That what I was doing was not necessarily, you talked about not necessarily being famous, but I just did last weekend, I did a newborn photo shoot for, a little boy who's 2 weeks old, so that his parents can have, and his little big sister can have these memories that I hope that they'll cherish for a lifetime. And I can come into a room and I can give you something that's going to last a lifetime. And I think that that's a way of giving grace. And I think that sometimes you give grace on a larger scale, and sometimes you give grace on a very personal, intimate scale.
Yeah.
But that is brightening the corner where you are. So, I can go and maybe do a blog post or give a speech and reach 100 people, and that's fantastic. And I hope I get to do some of those things. But I also can make a one-on-one connection and offer grace. And I think grace is something that we just don't give each other. And as a photographer, I think you give people grace. You're able to have them step in front of your camera, which is a very intimidating thing. Help them relax, help them feel comfortable, and then give them something back, a beautiful image of themselves. And I really pride myself on the fact that people generally say, never had anybody not say this, that they really enjoy working with me. They really enjoyed being in front of my camera, and they're actually surprised at how enjoyable it was. And so I'm pretty proud of that result comes from
Yeah.
that experience.
Well, I want to say, I need headshots. So as soon as I'm not terrified of COVID, you're
Come get
on.
it.
But aside from that, I love what you're talking about, because there's 50 zillion things that you've been up to that you could have bragged about, like the work you're doing with youth, the fact that you had this corporate trajectory, you pivoted, you exited, right? That you've done a lot of work with horses. Like, I know all this stuff, but the fact that when pressed with that question, you went into the personal impact that how we treat each other can have. And we were talking before we started the recording. And guys, I want to apologize. We got off to a really rough start because I realized I hadn't started the recording and I couldn't like go, oh wait, everybody, do over. So apologies for that. But prior to even starting that, she and I were on the Zoom with one another, and we were talking about that Entrepreneur magazine has a cover now, and it's got 137 some odd people who have started their own companies, and it says the world needs you, right? And then at the top, it's got all these, squares of things you can read about. Start your own franchise, how to repivot your marketing for like all this stuff, right? All this strategy and what's interesting, and I know that this isn't hugely marketable for Entrepreneur magazine, but this simplicity of turning inwards and saying what really matters to me, because you came straight out with a beautiful core value and you said grace. Can I be an experience of grace for others?
Yeah. Well, in my mind, being graceful is not what we think of ballerinas as being graceful and, on stage and moving kind of lifely around. That's really not what grace is. Grace is being able to hold a space for others that has compassion and empathy, and being able to have a high regard for people, even in moments where their behavior is not the best, and being able to give somebody that space. That's what being graceful is, truly. And I think that that's the greatest honor that we can give other people and ourselves. I mean, honestly, we give ourselves even less grace than we give to others. And that comes with just, I think, age. You just learn how to give yourself grace. You learn how to give others grace and give people space.
So how do you do it? Like, I know what I turn to give myself grace, but how do you invoke grace for yourself, especially in those moments when the anti-grace voice, whatever the how do you get yourself back into a state of being compassionate and allowing space for yourself to actually exist? What do you do to get there?
It's funny you mentioned that, because I remember, I guess it has been a decade ago, you and I were having lunch in San Francisco on the pier. And it was a particularly stressful time for me. And I said to you, I just keep going to the yoga mat. I don't know what else to do. I just go to yoga like every day. I just show up for class and just go to, like, it's the only thing I can think to do, because I can't solve it. That's my giving myself grace. I can't do anything except show up here on the mat. And that practice was the grace I gave myself. And what I've learned is that practice is not just for the yoga mat. It's actually in life. And in my practice, for me, is my camera. My practice is my computer. My practice is my writing pad. And so if I need to give myself the grace, that wild abandon that we were talking about earlier, that freedom to come and express myself with my camera or my pen, in that moment in time, to practice my craft, is my giving myself grace. I didn't understand that for a long time. For a long time, I thought I was trying to produce something. And this was a means to an end. And now I understand that it is a form of grace. It's a form of giving myself space, allowing myself something.
That's a kind of thing you just want to sit and breathe with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's always the stuff that we know when we hear it, right? That we most need to hear.
Yeah. It's the stuff we know we need to do, we don't always give to ourselves. Right?
Yeah.
The gift of rest, or the practice of expressing ourselves, or going, whether it's going to the yoga mat or nourishing our bodies with the right foods, or just taking in the communion with friends. We know it.
Yeah.
We just don't always give ourselves the grace to have it. Don't give
So
ourselves to have it.
So when you think about things you've done, like you've made a documentary, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You left corporate America shortly after I knew you years ago. Like, tell us about the tug between faith and fear, right? Because I think a lot of people, I've spoken to high performers that I work with in huge corporations. I've spoken to just friends, and there's this dance, and it's, you could call it a ballerina's dance, but I think for some of us it's pretty frenzied right now, given all the external pressures and real life concerns people have, right? But it's a stance between faith and fear.
Yeah.
And you've had to navigate the dance between faith and fear. And so tell us how you've found your footprint in faith in the face of fear.
It's an everyday, it's something that you do every day. It's every day fear comes to the door, and every day you face it, and it never goes away. And if you let your guard down, it comes back. And I don't think it's possible to live in a society such as ours, which has been so rigid. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately, because in the world that we're in right now, COVID-19 has put us into our homes, and it really gives you a chance to look at all of the rigidness that we apply to ourselves, from the uniforms we wear to work, and the makeup and the hairs and the expectations of when you start work and end work and when you play. And so your mind can then, when you're free, right? Freedom is a really scary place to be. We love to be, in a box. And so when you're free and you have all the choices, that's pretty scary. And so fear comes up. Am I doing the right thing? Is it okay that I'm, not putting on a suit and going to a job every day? If I'm engaged in a creative process, is my creative process going to be good enough? Am I good enough? And you have to, fear comes in a lot of different disguises, and you have to keep coming back to yourself every single time, and every day. Sometimes it seems like every hour, to say, yeah, you know what? Nope. I'm going to keep applying this. This is my voice.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, the newborn shoot that I did, in my mind, was a disaster, and I was mortified, because it's not that this woman has a 2-week-old little human being who's never going to be 2 weeks old again. Aww. And I want to so badly do such a good job, and I've been shooting pictures of children for 20 years. So it's not like I started doing this yesterday. And the fear that I'm not going to do a good job comes right up, and I'm facing that fear. And yesterday she puts this post, oh my God, these are so gorgeous. I love my pictures. They're wonderful. And I'm like, oh, thank God. Because fear is like, you know what? I'm right here.
Yeah.
Right here, you mess up. I think you just have to keep applying yourself. I don't think fear ever goes away. I think you just keep moving your feet anyway.
Do you, so one of the things I've learned, and I'm curious if you have a trick, around this. And I'm not into tips and tricks like that your tip or trick is going to work for someone else. I'm just curious if something that one of us has learned to use is going to remind another of us that whatever they're going through is solvable, right? So one thing I learned back in the day when I taught some yoga on the side in the city is I was always beating myself up before every class. It's not going to be good enough. No one's going to achieve enlightenment. It's not the perfect sequence. Your Dharma talk is lame. Your music is horrible. Nobody likes your class. You know, all those nasty ass voices, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remembered this one day I was straightening my house before I left to go and teach a class. And those voices are nattering on. And I caught my own gaze in the mirror. And my eyes were so sad. Mm. And I looked at myself and I literally said, would you just give me a break? Mm-hmm. Can you just use all that to support me? Right. And it was just like this little moment of going, oh, whatever creates that voice is fear of failure or looking bad or looking stupid, the voice of judgment. You know, I've done the creativity work that explores that a lot. But that's become one of my tricks is when I feel that voice piping in, because we all have it, no matter what. A lot of times I like to turn right towards it and say, could you just support me?
Yeah.
Right. So do you have something that you do? Do you have a way that you work with that voice of fear or that experience? Sometimes it's a felt sense, like be in your gut or your jaw or
I have two things actually. The first, one of them is on this call right here, listening in. I have a village. I mean, I have someone that I check in with friends, and because I will go down a rabbit hole in a second. I will be honest, right down I'll go. And so I'll check in with somebody else to say, am I going down a rabbit hole or do I need to really worry about this? And then the other thing that I do, and this comes back to my mother again, something that she said to me, and I carry this with me. So I remember when I was growing up, I would get upset about something, and then she would say, "So what?" And it would frustrate the heck out of me, right? Because I would be like, "What? Right? What? She'd say, "So what?" And then she'd say, "So what are you going to do about it?" Okay. And then I'd say, "Well, I'm going to, do this." And she'd say, "So what?" And I'd just get mad again. And she would keep saying, "So what?" until I got to the core of whatever it was. Right. And really, really got down deep into what was really going on. So I will do that to myself when I have the presence of mind to say, so I'll say, "So what?" Well, people are going to think, "Well, so what? So what? What do you care about what they think?" Okay, well, people are going to, "Well, so what?" And then at some point you get to the bottom of it. You're just like, "So then I'll be afraid I'm not good enough." Okay. That's not a reasonable thing. We can let that go. And it sounds like it's a really simple thing, but we can say to ourselves, "So what? I'm going to be late." Okay, so what? So what are you going to do about it? Okay, I guess I'll call and say I'm going to be late. Okay, they're going to judge me. So what? Like, so what? Like, get down to the core, and then you can let the core go. Because I think a lot of times we're not functioning at what's really going on. We're just reacting and all these different acting out all these different things, and that's not really what it's about. And getting that, so what gets you there? It gets you to the core.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask you, what is the most exciting thing in your life right now and why? What are you most excited about and why?
Okay. I think I'm most excited about the fact I just went through a couple of weeks of coaching where I really gave myself permission to explore my business. I think we can, I am guilty of this. I will spend a lot of time working on projects for my clients because it feels productive, and of course, because they pay me, right? Mm-hmm. And when I stop to work on things for me, that doesn't feel like it's okay, because I have clients who need things done and they're going to pay me and I should get paid for things. Mm-hmm. And that feels very productive. I feel very productive. But taking the time to really look at my business and where I want to take it and what I want to do with it and what I want to say was this huge bit of grace that I gave myself. And out of that came this incredible clarity. This is surety of I'm on the right path. This is what I want to do. And I'm really clear about that path. And that's exciting.
Yeah.
That's really exciting.
Were there surprises there by taking that step back? Yeah.
Yeah.
What surprised you?
I think, I still want to do things that I think other people think are good for me. I think other people want me to be. And I still want to stick some of that stuff in there. Like, okay, I'm going to do this too, because that's really hot right now, or it's really marketable, or I should, people want that, so this process made me just go, I don't want to do that. So why are you building or designing a future that you don't really want to do?
Yeah.
Take that and have the courage to take that out and this is the thing I want to design.
So what's it going to look like, Michele?
It's going to look like, I say, I'll give you my mission statement. I'm real excited about it.
Okay.
Right. I give people the creative toolbox to design the lives they've always wanted to live.
Beautiful.
Yeah. That's the thing I can do. That's the grace I can give you. That's the way I can help. Yeah.
So that's grace, and it's your love of design, mm-hmm. and it's your love of nurturing people in their lives, and it does have that feeling of kids running out into the field and catching some fireflies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm going to open it up because I have a feeling other people may have things they want to say to you or things they want to ask you about. Does anybody have a question for Michele? And I'll take you off mute. Okay, I'm going to get Marjorie.
I always have a question. Michele, it's nice to meet you. I've heard so much about you, and this has been really amazing. And hearing you speak about grace and giving your space for grace. And I, too, believe, like Tevis said, like tips and tricks are unique to individuals. But I'm curious if you've seen any commonalities. It sounds like you've touched a lot of people throughout your life. And when someone is trying to give themselves some grace, right, and struggling, have you found that there's particular things that could be helpful to them that you found has worked well for a lot of people?
Yeah, I think that just like asking yourself, so what? I think asking yourself what's at stake can really be helpful. If you say to someone, well, what's at stake for you, it'll get them down to that core again. And it's a storytelling trick. When you have a character that's motivated, you want to motivate that character to do something, they have to have stakes, right? If there's nothing at stake, then we have no motivation to do something. So sometimes you have to say to people, well, what's at stake? I mean, why does it matter? And that helps them get down to the core. And I think asking ourselves, and sometimes, I find myself fighting like in my head. Like I'm having arguments in my head. I'm already prepared for a fight with you. I haven't even met you yet. Like I'm driving down the road and I'm just waiting for you to cut me off so that I can tell you what for, right? And then I'm like,
only you, Michele. No one else ever does that.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And then I have to stop and go, Michele, like you're not, like no one has cut you off yet. You're having an argument in your head when what's at stake here? And I'm just like, nothing. Yeah, nothing's at stake. You're safe. like, just bring it on down for a second.
You got your dukes up, you're ready, you know?
Yeah, it's like, okay. You know, it's like, you're okay. Like, what's at stake? Nothing. All right. Then I can calm down. I can sit down. I can sit back in the chair in the car and not be like, oh, like this. And trust yourself that if someone cuts you off, you'll be prepared. That finger is ready, prepared to go if it has to. Like, in the meantime, you can relax. I don't know if that's helpful.
Well, I love the honesty of it. I mean, I'm sure that Marjorie does as well, because these are the inner jerk, right, moments that all of us have, and to just put it out there and admit to it. I mean, who can't freaking relate to that? I'm planning for some conflict.
Yeah.
Right?
Right? Yeah.
Really? So
It's so funny too, though, when you're planning for conflict like that and someone deflates that and you're like, oh.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Oh, okay.
With all this anger I had and all this planning I had. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like so part of what the book's about, you've obviously read it. You read it a couple of years ago, but it's really about defining success on your own terms and then beginning to choose from your truth right now, right? We've got such a propensity for postponing happiness or postponing authenticity. Well, I'll be my real self after I'm wealthy, or I'll be my real self after I get the guy, the house, the girl, the job, the like, not really understanding that the only time is now and the only place is right here, right? And from what I'm hearing you say, it's not only that you've stepped into that for yourself, but you really want to be a channel of that for other people as well. Yeah.
I mean, you can't make somebody not go down their path. You know, if they want to go down the path that, you know, and they want to, you know, do it the hard way, then okay, you can't really stop them from doing it. But, you know, I think that there are people who just want to breathe, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
And they just want somebody to give, you know, say, hey, here's a space for you. Grace again. I'm creating a space for you to breathe.
Yeah.
Or I'm giving you a tool set that lets you change and helps you build something that is better, lets you start right now to realize who you are. And I think people, it's so needed.
Oh my goodness. We all need it.
Yeah. Now more than ever, because our systems are breaking down. And we have to empower ourselves to build up a new system. What's happening right now with COVID and with our government and with the economy and with the world, we can see it's all hard and it's bad and it's horrific in a lot of ways. But we have the work of rebuilding it. It's not just the luxury of rebuilding it. We have to rebuild it. So we should all be empowered to rebuild it in the best vision that we have, right? We don't let somebody build it for us. We've got to rebuild. We've got to recreate this. And it can be a beautiful thing.
That whole default of waiting for someone else to do it is done.
It's over. Yeah. And the hiding out is over. And, with entrepreneur says, the world needs you. Yeah, the world doesn't need you to create another McDonald's franchise. We talked about this, right?
Oh my God.
We need you to decide that you have a unique offering and you're going to bring it forward and you're going to help make the world a better place. That's what the world needs you to do. And I think each of us comes with our own unique calling, our own mission, and that's why we're here. We're not here to follow other people. We're here to discover who we are and make our own difference.
Oh my God, you are a poster child for my book. That's exactly what it's saying. Because we need you. We need the real you. So, and you, I'm pointing at you, Michele Blackwell. are a great exemplar. So thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing your story. Of course, I want to brag that you're doing 8 zillion things to help young people understand this way of thinking about their lives, and all kinds of other stuff. But I really feel like there's we can't get really trapped up in the grandiosity of what is our output as opposed to what is it that we're bringing to our lives. And those metrics, waiting for that pat on the head, I think screws us all up, because it really is not, it's not about that. It's what is radically true of you, because the word radical isn't extreme. It means coming from the roots.
Yeah.
Right. So thank you for sharing how you come from your roots.
Thank you for having me.
That's awesome. Any other questions, folks? No, they're all just basking in your gorgeousness. I can tell. I can tell by all these shining faces. Look at them. Hi, everybody. Okay, you guys. So I don't have anyone scheduled yet for next week, but
Can you bring Michele back on?
every week. I'll just keep bringing her back on every week. But I really thank you for being here this week. Stay tuned with our schedule at balanceintegration.com. And actually, I do have someone. She's her name is Abby Sugar, and she is she is a trans entrepreneur, and she's an ass kicker. And she's pretty freaking fascinating. So join us next week on Wednesday. It's always on Wednesdays. It'll be up on our site within the next couple of days. And I thank you guys for taking time out for this conversation. And thank you.
How can I purchase your book?
What?
How can I purchase your book?
Oh, go on to Amazon. It comes out on August 10th, but it's available now for pre-purchase. And I would love you to buy it. Thank you so much for asking that. I'm horrible about that kind of self-promotion, which anyone who knows me will say, yeah, she sucks at that anyway. We all have our skill sets, right?
It's a great book. Definitely read it if you get a chance.
Okay, you guys, thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Michele.
Thank you, Michele.